3 months had passed since the day Dayan nearly died. The Veloth refugee colony on the world, called New Haven, had become his home. Though he still struggled to believe it, the colony was built into the side of a mountain on a warm world that reminded the Veloth of their lost home. There were gardens and fountains and buildings that curved like wings. It was beautiful in a way that made his chest ache when he first arrived. Carried on a stretcher and barely conscious, he had expected to be tolerated at best. Humans were not welcome among the Veloth. Their species had done nothing while the debt collectors destroyed a civilization, but word of what Dayan had done had spread faster than he could have imagined. Captain Yemen's message had reached every refugee ship and settlement in the sector. People knew his name. They knew his story. They knew that a human had paid 1,000 credits for a dying Veloth, and then killed 3 hunters to protect her. The elders of New Haven welcomed him as a guest of honor. They gave him a room with a view of the gardens. They sent their best doctors to complete his healing. They asked nothing in return except that he'd tell his story to whoever wanted to hear it. Dayan found the attention uncomfortable. He had not done anything heroic in his own mind. He had simply done what any decent person would do. But Sora reminded him that decency was rare in the universe. They lived in what seemed ordinary to him was extraordinary to people who had known nothing but cruelty. She visited him every day during his recovery. At first she came to make sure he was healing properly. Then she came because she wanted to talk. Then she came because she could not imagine a day without seeing him. Dayan felt the same way. Though he was too old and too broken to say it out loud, when he was finally well enough to walk, Sora took him to meet the people of New Haven. They touched his hands and thanked him in voices that trembled with emotion. Children sang songs for him that their mothers had taught them. Elders bowed their heads and called him friend. Dayan did not know how to respond to any of it. He had spent 7 years feeling like a failure. He had spent 7 years believing he deserved nothing good. Now these people treated him like he mattered. It was almost too much to bear. One evening Sora found him sitting alone in the garden. The suns were setting, and the sky was painted in shades of orange and gold. He was staring at the holographic image of his daughter. "You are thinking about her," Sora said. "Always." He replied. She sat down beside him. "Tell me about her." So he did. He told Sora about the day his daughter was born and how she had fit perfectly in his arms. He told her about the way she laughed and the songs she liked to sing. He told her about the plague and the desperate race to get home and the terrible moment when he realized he was too late by the time he finished. Tears were streaming down his face. Sora reached over and took his hand. "She would be proud of you," she said. Dayan shook his head. "I failed her." "No," Sora said firmly. "You were far away and the universe was cruel. That is not failure. Failure would have been letting her death destroy you. Failure would have been becoming hard and cold like so many others." She squeezed his hand. "Instead, you stayed soft," she continued. "You kept your heart open, even when it hurt. And because of that, I am alive." Dayan looked at her in the golden light of sunset. Her feathers seemed to glow. She had recovered her health in the months since they arrived at New Haven. She was beautiful in a way that transcended species. But more than that, she was kind, she was brave. She had become the best friend he had ever known. "I was thinking about leaving," he admitted. Sora's expression flickered with something like pain. "Leaving? The gentle dawn is repaired," he said. "I have a ship and I should get back to work. I cannot stay here forever living off the kindness of your people." "You could if you wanted to," Sora said. "I know, but I am afraid, Holler, it is all I know how to do." Sora was quiet for a moment. Then she spoke carefully. "The elders talked to me yesterday," she said. "They want to offer you a contract. They need someone they can trust to move supplies between the refugee settlements. Someone who knows the shipping routes and will not cheat them." Dayan stared at her. "They want to hire me. They want to partner with you," Sora corrected. "The Veloth do not have many friends in this galaxy. but you have proven yourself to be one. They would rather work with you than with strangers who see them as easy targets. It was more than Daehan had ever expected. It was more than he thought he deserved. I will consider it, he said. There is one more thing, Sora added. What she? Took a deep breath. I want to come with you. Daehan's heart did something strange in his chest. You want to leave New Haven? I want to stay with you, Sora said. This place is beautiful, and my people are here. But you are the one who saved me. You are the one who showed me that the universe is not only cruelty. I do not want to say goodbye. Daehan looked at her for a long time. He thought about all the reasons this was a bad idea. He thought about the dangers of space and the difficulties of life on a freighter. He thought about the fact that he was human and she was Velith, and the galaxy would never fully accept them. Then he thought about his daughter. He thought about how she would have wanted him to be happy. He thought about how empty his ship would feel without Sora in it. Okay, he said. Sora's face lit up with a smile that made everything else disappear. Okay, you can come with me. We will take the contract, and we will haul supplies for your people, and we will figure out the rest as we go. Sora threw her arms around him. Her embrace was careful because Velith's bones were fragile, but her joy was unmistakable. Daehan held her gently and let himself feel something he had not felt in 7 years. Hope. The next morning, they stood together in the cockpit of the Gentle Dawn. The ship had been repaired and upgraded by Velith engineers. She was faster now and stronger and ready for whatever the galaxy threw at them. Captain Yemen had come to see them off. He shook Daehan's hand in the human style and touched foreheads with Sora in the Velith tradition. You changed everything, he told Daehan. You probably do not realize it, but you did. The stories about you have given my people something they lost a long time ago. What is that? Daehan asked. Faith, Yemen said. Faith that kindness still exists. Faith that mercy is not weakness. Faith that the universe is not entirely dark. He stepped back. Travel safely, he said, and know that you will always have a home among the Velith. Daehan nodded. He did not trust himself to speak. Sora took the co-pilot's seat as they lifted off. From New Haven, the world fell away beneath them and the stars opened up ahead. It was a new beginning for both of them. A future built on mercy instead of transaction, on hope instead of fear, on love that had no price because it was freely given. Sora began to sing as they entered the void between the stars. Her voice filled the cockpit with warmth and light, and for the first time in 7 years, Daehan smiled, not because the pain was gone, but because he had finally found something worth living. For the Gentle Dawn flew on into the darkness. But the darkness no longer seemed so dark because two souls had found each other, and together they carried a light that would never go out. The Velith rescue ship was called the Wings of Dawn. Its captain was an older male named Yemen, whose feathers had gone silver with age. He had seen much in his long life, and very little of it had been good when his ship received a distress call. His first instinct was to ignore it. Humans had not been kind to his people. They had stood by while the debt collectors stripped his homeworld bare. They had purchased Velith at auctions and used them as entertainment. He had no love for their species and no interest in risking his crew for one of their dying ships. But the voice on the Visron distress call was Velith, a young female. Crying and pleading in their own language, she begged for help, not for herself, but for a human who was dying. That made Yemen curious enough to investigate. He boarded the Gentle Dawn with a security team, expecting to find a trap or, at worst, a slaver who had gotten what he deserved. Instead, he found a scene that would haunt him for the rest of his days. A this young Velith woman knelt in a pool of human blood. Her hands were pressed against the wounds of a human male who lay unconscious on the floor. 3 dead hunters surrounded them. The human had clearly fought and killed them all. The young woman looked up when Yemen entered. Her eyes were red from crying, and her voice was raw from singing. She looked like she had not slept in days. "Please," she said. "Please help him. He saved my life. He fought them so they would not take me back to the slaughterhouse." Yemen surveyed the scene with growing confusion. "Explain," he demanded, and so Sora told him everything she told him about the auction. And the Crest slaughterhouse she told him about. The human who had paid 1,000 credits for a dying Velith he had never met. She told him about the journey and the kindness and how Dayan had expected nothing in return. She told him about the hunters and how Dayan had hidden her and faced them alone by the time she finished. Yemen did not know what to think. "Humans do not do such things," he said. "This one did." Sora replied. She reached down and gently turned Dayan's hand so Yemen could see what he held, even unconscious and bleeding. The human clutched a small holographic device. The image it projected showed a young human girl with dark hair and a bright smile. "His daughter," Sora explained. "She died years ago. He could not save her, so he saved me instead." Yemen stared at the image for a long moment. He thought about all the things he believed about humans. He thought about all the times they had failed his people. Then he looked at this one human, nearly dead because he had chosen to protect a Velith stranger. "Bring him to our medical bay." Yemen ordered his crew. They moved quickly. Dayan was transferred to the Wings of Dawn, where Velith doctors began working. To save his life, Yemen stayed on the Gentle Dawn with Sora while his engineers assessed the damage. The ship was badly hurt, but not beyond repair. "You love him," Yemen observed. Sora shook her head. "I do not know what I feel," she admitted. "I did not know people like him existed. I thought the universe was only cruelty and transactions. He showed me something different." "What did he show you?" "That kindness can exist without a price," she said. "But some beings help others simply because they cannot bear to do otherwise." Yemen was quiet for a long time. He had lived many years and seen many things. He had learned to protect himself and his people by trusting no one outside their species. This human challenged everything. "He thought he knew. If he survives," Yemen said slowly. "What will you do?" "I do not know," Sora replied. "He was taking me to the refugee colony so I could start a new life. But now I am not sure I want to leave him. He is human," Yemen pointed out. "Your people will not understand." "Then I will help them understand," Sora said. "I will tell them what he did. I will make them see that not all humans are like the ones who hurt us." Yemen studied her face. He saw determination there. And something else. He saw hope. It had been a long time since he had seen hope in a young Velith's eyes. "Come," he said. "Let us see if our doctors can work miracles." They returned to the Wings of Dawn. The medical bay was a flurry of activity. Velith medicine was advanced in ways that other species did not fully appreciate. They had spent centuries perfecting the art of healing fragile bodies like their own. Now they applied that knowledge to a human who should have been far too damaged to save ours. Past Sora refused to leave the observation window. She watched the doctors work and she prayed to God she had stopped believing in. Yemen brought her food and water, which she barely touched. He found himself staying with her, though he could not explain why. Perhaps it was because her faith was so absolute. Perhaps it was because she made him want to believe that one human sacrifice could mean something. Near dawn, by ship time, the lead doctor emerged from the medical bay. Her expression was tired but not defeated. "He will live," she announced. Sora collapsed into a chair, and Webturin put a hand on her shoulder and let her cry later. When the tears had stopped, he sat down beside her. "I have been thinking," he said, "about what you told me, about what this human did." Sora looked at him. "My people have been scattered and broken for 3 years," Yemen continued. "We have learned to trust no one. to expect nothing good from the universe. We have survived, but we have lost something in the process. He paused. I think we have lost hope, he said. I think we have forgotten that kindness can exist, that mercy can be real. Your human reminded me of something I had forgotten. What is that? Sora asked. That one good act can change everything, Yemen replied. That one person choosing to be kind can create ripples that spread further than anyone imagines. He stood and straightened his uniform. I am going to send a message to the other refugee ships, he said. I am going to tell them what happened here. I am going to tell them about the human who gave everything to save one of our own. Sora stared at him. Why? She asked. Yemen almost smiled. Because our people need to hear it, he said. Because they need to know that not everyone in this universe is cruel. Because hope is the only thing that will keep us from becoming as hard and cold as the void between the stars. He walked toward a communication room. Sora watched him go. Then she turned back to the observation window and watched Dayan. Sleep. His chest rose and fell with steady breaths. The color was returning to his face. He would live, and somewhere in the darkness of space, a message began to spread from ship to ship. A story about a human who had answered suffering with mercy. A story that would change the way the Velith saw the galaxy, and perhaps, in time, change the galaxy itself. 10 days into the journey, the trouble found them. Sora was sitting in the cockpit when the communication panel began to flash. Red Dahin had taught her the basics of the ship's systems, because he said knowledge was freedom and she should never be helpless again. She recognized the flashing light as an incoming transmission. Dahin arrived moments later and accepted the call. A face appeared on the screen that made Sora's blood run cold. It was not the Kreth from the auction, but it was a Kreth nonetheless. They all had the same dead eyes and the same hunger in their voices. Captain Yun Dayan, the Kreth said, we have a legal matter to discuss regarding property you acquired at the outer station. Mark it. Dahin's face went hard. She's not property. He said, according to consortium law, she is. The Kreth replied, and according to our records, your bid was made under fraudulent circumstances. You had no intention of using the merchandise for its intended purpose. That makes the sale invalid. That is not how any of this works. Dayan said, that is how it works when you have enough lawyers. The Kreth said, with something like a smile, we have filed a claim with the sector authority. You have 48 hours to surrender the Velith to our recovery team or face criminal charges. The transmission ended. Sora sat very still in her chair. She had known this was too good to be true. The universe always collected its debts one way or another. This is not legal. Dahin muttered as he began checking his navigation charts. They cannot just claim someone back like a piece of furniture. Yes, they can. Sora said quietly. He looked at her. The Kreth have influence with the sector authority, she explained. They provide cheap protein paste to a dozen colony worlds. That makes them valuable. The authority will rule in their favor because it is easier than making an enemy of them. Dayan's jaw tightened. Ben, we outrun them, he said. The Gentle Dawn is not fast, but she is reliable. We can reach the outer reach before any recovery team catches up. They will send hunters. Sora said, probably. Hunters with better ships. Almost certainly. Then there is no point. Sora stood and faced him. You have been kind to me, and I am grateful. More grateful than I can say, but I will not let you destroy your life for mine. That is not your choice to make. Dayan said, you do not understand. Sora's voice cracked. They will kill you if you resist. The Kreth do not care about laws or consequences. They will take what they want and remove anything that stands in their way. I understand perfectly, Dayan replied, and I am not surrendering you. Sora wanted to scream at him. She wanted to shake him until he saw reason. Instead, she felt tears burning in her eyes for the first time in 2 years. Why? She asked. Why would you risk everything for someone you barely know? Why does my life matter so much to you?" Dayan was quiet for a long moment. "Because I could not save my daughter," he said finally. "Because I spent 7 years hating myself for being too far away. Because every night I dream about what I would have done differently if I had been there." He turned to face her fully. "I cannot change what happened to her," he said. "I cannot bring her back or undo my failure, but I can make sure that you survive. I can make sure that at least one person does not die because I was not brave enough to help." Sora did not know what to say. She had never met anyone like this human. She had never known that such people could exist in a universe so cruel. "The hunters will come," she whispered. "Yes," he agreed. "They might kill us both. They might. And you still will not let me go." "Never." Sora wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. "Then I will help you," she said. "Tell me what to do." Dayan almost smiled. "For now, we run." They pushed the gentle dawn as hard as she would go. Dayan knew every trick for coaxing extra speed from old engines. And Sora learned quickly how to monitor the systems and alert him to problems. For 2 days they made good progress toward the outer reach. Then the hunters found them. The ship that dropped out of hyperspace behind them was 3 times the size of the gentle dawn and bristling with weapons. Dayan swore under his breath. "Go to the cargo bay," he told Sora. "There is a hidden compartment behind the spare parts. Get inside and do not make a sound, no matter what you hear." "What are you going to do?" she asked. "Whatever I have to," he said. Sora wanted to argue, but his eyes told her. There was no time. She ran to the cargo bay and found the compartment he described. It was small and dark and smelled like machine oil. She crawled inside and pulled the panel closed behind her. Through the metal walls she could hear the hunter ship, demanding they cut their engines. She heard Dayan respond with defiance. She heard the sound of the airlock cycling as the hunters boarded. Then she heard voices, harsh and threatening, demanding to know where the Velith was. Dayan told them to go to hell. The sound of violence followed. Sora pressed her hands over her ears, but she could not block out the crashes and grunts and the terrible wet sounds of impact. She squeezed her eyes shut and tried not to imagine what was happening. She thought about her mother. She thought about home. She thought about the human who had given everything to protect a stranger. The sounds eventually stopped. Sora waited. In the darkness, barely breathing, she heard footsteps moving through the cargo bay, heard the hunters searching for her. They cursed and threw things aside. They came very close to her hiding spot, but did not find the compartment. Finally, she heard them leave. The airlock cycled again. The hunter ship detached. Silence fell over the gentle dawn. Sora waited for what felt like hours before she dared to move. She pushed open the panel and climbed out on shaking legs. The cargo bay was a mess of scattered supplies and broken containers. She made her way toward the cockpit. Terrified of what she would find, Dayan lay on the floor in a pool of blood. 3 hunter bodies surrounded him. He had killed them all before they could find her. Sora dropped to her knees beside him and searched desperately for signs of life. His chest still moved. He was breathing. Barely, but the wounds were severe and blood was everywhere. She did not know enough about human medicine to help him. She did not know what to do. For a moment, she simply knelt there, frozen by despair. Then she remembered the communication panel. She remembered that Velith refugee ships patrolled these shipping lanes. She stumbled to the controls and sent out a distress call on every Velith frequency she could find. Then she returned to Dayan and pressed her hands against his worst wound. "To slow the bleeding, please," she whispered. "Please do not die. You cannot die. Not after everything you did for me." He did not respond. Sora began to sing. It was an old healing song her mother had taught her when she was small. The Velith believed that song could ease pain and guide souls back from the edge of darkness. She did not know if it would work on a human. She did not know if anything would work, but she sang anyway. Because it was all she had left to give. The hours crawled past. Dayan's breathing grew weaker. Sora kept singing until her voice cracked and failed, and somewhere in the endless dark between the stars, a Velith ship heard her call and changed course toward the gentle dawn. Sora woke to warmth and the smell of cooking. For a terrible moment she did not know where she was, and her body tensed with the instinct to flee or submit, whichever would keep her alive. Then she remembered the auction, the human, the small cabin. With soft blankets, she was still on the ship. She was still breathing. A gentle knock came at the door. Sora. Dayan's voice called. I brought food if you are hungry. She sat up quickly and tried to make herself presentable. Her feathers were dull, and her clothes were the same rags she had worn at the auction, but she smoothed them down anyway. Appearance mattered. Owners noticed when you did not make an effort. You may enter, she said. The door opened, and Dayan stepped inside. Carrying a tray. On it sat a bowl of something warm and steaming, a cup of water, and a piece of bread that looked freshly made. He set the tray on a small table beside the bed. I do not know what Velith eat, he admitted, but I made soup. It should be gentle on your stomach. Sora looked at the food, and then at him. She knew what came next. She had done this before, with both of her previous owners. The transaction was simple, even if it made her feel hollow inside. She stood from the bed and lowered her eyes. Thank you for your kindness, she said in the soft voice she had been trained to use. How may I serve you in return? She reached for the collar of her ragged shirt, ready to remove it. Dayan made a strangled sound and turned away so fast he nearly hit the wall. No, he said, his voice strained. That is not. I do not want. Please just eat. Sora froze with her hand still at her collar. She did not understand. I have displeased you, she said. No, he said again, still facing the wall. You have not done anything wrong. I do not want that. I want nothing from you. He took a deep breath and finally turned back around, though his face had turned red in a way that seemed uncomfortable for him. Please, he said more gently, sit down and eat. You need your strength. We can talk after. He left the cabin quickly. Closing the door behind him, Sora stood alone in the small room with the warm food waiting on the table. Her mind raced through possibilities. Perhaps he was testing her. Perhaps he wanted to see if she would behave without supervision. Perhaps this was some strange game she did not understand. But the food smelled good, and her stomach ached with hunger. She sat down and ate. The soup was simple but warm, and it tasted better than anything she had eaten in months. She finished every drop and wiped the bowl clean with the bread. When she was done, she waited for instructions that did not come. An hour passed. Then too Sora eventually gathered her courage and left the cabin. She found Dayan in the cockpit, sitting in the pilot's chair and staring at the stars through the viewport. He looked up when she approached. How was the food? He asked. It was good, she said. Thank you. He nodded and returned his attention to the stars. Sora stood there uncertainly. She did not know the rules of this ship or this owner. She did not know where she was supposed to be or what she was supposed to do. You may sit if you want, Dayan said without looking at her. There is a chair right there. She sat in the co-pilot's seat and folded her hands in her lap. The silence stretched between them like a living thing. Finally, she could not bear it anymore. Why did you buy me? She asked. Dayan was quiet for a long moment. I do not know, he said at last. I was not planning to. I came to the station to pick up cargo. I saw the auction, and I wanted to leave, but my feet would not move. He rubbed his face with one hand. When that Kreth made his bid, I could not let it happen. I could not watch them take you to die. But I'm nobody to you, Sora said. I have nothing to offer. I am sick and weak, and probably dying anyway. Dayan looked at her then. His eyes were sad in a way that seemed to go very deep. My daughter was nobody to the universe, he said quietly. She was just one small human child on a colony world that most people have never heard of. but she was everything to me. Sora stayed silent and waited. She died 7 years ago. He continued. There was a plague on the colony, and I was hauling cargo 3 systems away. By the time I got back, she was already gone. I never even got to say goodbye. His hands tightened on the armrests of his chair. I could not save her, he said. I was too far away and too late. I have carried that failure every day since. He looked back at the stars. When I saw you standing on that platform, waiting to die, I thought about her. I thought about how she was alone at the end and how nobody could help her. And I decided that maybe I could help you instead. Sora did not know what to say. She had expected greed or cruelty or hidden desire. She had not expected grief. I am sorry about your daughter, she said finally. Daehin shook his head. You do not need to be sorry, he said. You did not do anything. I just want you to understand that I do not want payment. I do not want service. I do not want anything from you except for you to get healthy and live your life. That does not make sense, Sora said. He laughed softly, but there was no joy in it. I know, he said. It does not make sense to me either. But here we are. They sat together in silence. After that, Sora watched the stars slide past the viewport and tried to understand. This strange human who had bought her for 1,000 credits and wanted nothing in return. She could not comprehend it. The universe was built on transactions. Everything had a price. Kindness without cost was not real. It could not be real. And yet, here she was, warm and fed and heading toward freedom with a man who expected nothing from her. She did not trust it, but somewhere deep inside, in a place she had thought was dead, a tiny spark began to glow. Maybe she had been wrong, maybe not everything in the universe was a transaction. Maybe some beings simply chose to be kind because they could not bear to be anything else. She looked at Daehin's tired face and wondered what it had cost him to become this way. She suspected the price had been very high indeed. The auction house smelled like fear and metal. Sora knew that smell well because she had breathed it for 2 years now, ever since the debt collectors came for her world and sold her people like cargo. She stood on the platform with her thin arms wrapped around herself, trying to stop the shaking that had nothing to do with cold. The Velith were not built for places like this. Her people came from a warm world where the air was gentle and the light was soft. They had hollow bones like birds and skin that bruised. If you touched it too hard, their voices could make sounds that other species found beautiful. And that beauty had made them valuable in the worst possible way. Sora was 20 cycles old. Though she felt much older, her feathers had lost their shine months ago. Her wings, small and decorative rather than functional, hung limp against her back. She had stopped eating properly when her second owner decided she was too much trouble to keep. Now she stood here, in this gray station at the edge of civilized space, waiting to learn what the rest of her life would look like. The auctioneer was a droth, a species that resembled walking insects with too many eyes. He called out numbers in a bored voice while buyers examined the merchandise. Most of them did not look at Sora for long. She was damaged goods, and everyone could see it. Velith female, the droth announced when her turn came. Young but in poor health, trained in vocal performance and domestic service. Starting bid is 500 credits. The room stayed quiet. Sora felt something cold settle in her chest. She had learned that silence was dangerous. Silence meant nobody wanted you. And if nobody wanted you, they sent you to places where your body had more value than your life. 400. The droth tried again. Come now. The Velith are becoming rare. This is an investment opportunity. Still nothing. A Kreth in the corner made a sound that might have been laughter. The Kreth were large reptilian creatures who ran slaughterhouses across the sector. They bought the unsellable ones for cheap and processed them into protein paste. Sora had heard stories about what happened in those facilities. She had promised herself she would find a way to die before she ended up there. 300. The droth said with clear irritation. Final offer before alternative arrangements. The Kreth raised one massive claw. Sora closed her eyes. She thought about her mother, who had sung her to sleep every night when she was small. She thought about the sky of her homeworld, which she would never see again. She prepared herself for the end. 500. The voice came from the back of the room. Sora opened her eyes. A human stood near the entrance. One hand raised. He was not tall for his species, with a weathered face and dark hair that was going gray at the edges. His clothes were practical rather than expensive, the kind worn by traders and freight haulers who spent their lives moving between stations. He looked uncomfortable, like he had surprised himself by speaking the Kreth, made an angry noise, and raised his bid to 600. The human hesitated. Sora could see him thinking, could see him calculating costs against whatever had made him speak in the first place. She wanted to tell him not to bother. She was not worth a bidding war. She was barely worth the food it would take to keep her alive. 1,000? The human said. The room went quiet again. But this was a different kind of silence. This was the silence of people trying to understand something that did not make sense. The Kreth hissed, but did not counter. 1,000 credits was far more than any reasonable buyer would pay for a dying. Velith, the auctioneer, recovered quickly and completed the sale before the human could change his mind. Within minutes, Sora found herself following her new owner through the crowded corridors of the station. She kept her eyes down and her steps quick, the way she had been taught. Do not speak unless spoken to. Do not ask questions. Do not give them reasons to be angry. The human led her to a docking bay where an old freighter waited. The ship was called the Gentle Dawn. According to the faded letters on its hull, it was not impressive, just a working vessel that had seen many years of service. But it was clean and well maintained. The human stopped at the boarding ramp and turned to look at her. My name's Yun Daeun, he said. You can call me Daeun. Sora nodded and kept her eyes down. What is your name? He asked. Sora, she answered. If that pleases you, I can respond to whatever name you prefer. Something crossed his face, an expression she could not read. Sora is fine, he said. Come inside. You need food and rest. She followed him into the ship. The interior was simple, but surprisingly warm. There were blankets folded on a passenger seat, thick ones that looked soft. There was a small cooking area that smelled like real food, not the protein blocks they fed to slaves. Daeun gestured toward a cabin at the back. You can stay in there, he said. It was a storage room, but I cleaned it out. There is a bed and heating controls. You should be comfortable. Sora stared. The door without moving. She was waiting for the rest of it. The explanation of what she would need to do to earn these comforts. Every owner wanted something. That was the fundamental truth of her existence. She had learned to accept it, even when it made her want to disappear. You should sleep, Daeun said when she did not respond. I will bring food in a few hours. We have a long journey ahead. Where are we going? Sora asked. There is a Velith refugee colony in the outer reach, he said. It will take about 3 weeks to get there. You will be safe with your own people. Sora looked up at him for the first time. His face was tired, but his eyes were steady. She searched for deception and found nothing she could recognize. I do not understand, she said. I know, he replied. Get some rest. We can talk later. He walked away toward the cockpit. Leaving her alone in the corridor, Sora stood there for a long moment, trying to make sense of what had happened. A human had paid 1,000 credits for a dying Velith, and now he was taking her to freedom. There had to be a cost. There was always a cost. She entered the cabin and found it exactly as he described. The bed was small but real, with pillows and blankets that looked clean. The heating controls were set to a temperature that felt almost like home. Sora sat on the edge of the bed and wrapped her arms around herself. She did not cry because she had forgotten how, but something stirred in her chest. Something that might have been hope, if she still remembered what hope felt like. She lay down and closed her eyes. For the first time in 2 years, she fell asleep without fear. But deep in her mind, a small voice whispered that kindness always came with a price. She would find out what Dae-yeon wanted eventually, and when she did, she would pay it, because that was how the universe worked. That was the only truth she knew.